My name is Sarah, and at 28 years old, I finally got to experience my dream wedding after 3 years of saving every extra dollar I earned as a kindergarten teacher. I should have been floating on air that day, surrounded by loved ones in the historic church my mother had always adored. Instead, I found myself staring at the horrifying truth about my maid of honor displayed on a projection screen for all our guests to see. If you've ever discovered that the person you trusted most was actually plotting your downfall, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join a community that understands that betrayal from your best friend cuts deeper than any knife. For 12 years, I had been best friends with Emma, a 29-year-old fellow teacher who worked at the same elementary school across town. We met in college, instantly connected over our shared love of teaching, and have been inseparable ever since. Emma was there for every major moment in my life. When I got my first teaching job, when I met David at a school fundraiser, and most importantly, when I lost my mom to cancer 2 years ago. She held my hand through the funeral, helped me sort through Mom's belongings, and promised she would stand by my side on my wedding day, like my mother would have wanted. We lived in Portland, Oregon, where the perpetual rain and cozy coffee shops had been the backdrop to our friendship for over a decade. I rented a small but charming one-bedroom apartment downtown, while Emma lived in a slightly larger place in the suburbs. We both loved our jobs teaching kindergarten, though I had recently been promoted to lead teacher at Lincoln Elementary, something I had worked toward for years. Emma had applied for the same position but didn't have quite enough experience yet. I never thought that would matter to our friendship. My fiancé, David, was a 30-year-old architect with a warm smile and steady presence that had helped me navigate the grief of losing my mom. He proposed on our second anniversary with my mother's restored wedding ring, a family heirloom I'd thought was lost forever until David secretly had it repaired. Planning our wedding became a bittersweet journey without Mom, but Emma stepped in, volunteering to be my maid of honor and helping with every detail. "This wedding will be everything your mom would have wanted for you," Emma had promised, squeezing my hand as we picked out invitations. "I'll make sure of it." What I didn't realize was that behind every supportive smile and helpful suggestion lurked a plan so calculated and cruel that it would eventually shatter not my wedding day, but my entire understanding of friendship. The trouble began 3 days before the wedding, when Emma and I were finalizing details at my apartment. The weather forecast showed unexpected sunshine for our Saturday ceremony, a rare blessing in rainy Portland. I was organizing the seating chart while Emma arranged welcome bags for out-of-town guests. "I can't believe it's finally happening," I said, smiling at the thought of walking down the aisle in my mother's restored dress. "Mom would have loved everything about this wedding." Emma nodded, but something flickered across her face, an expression I couldn't quite identify. "She would be proud of you," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Hey, did you withdraw that cash for the vendor tips like I suggested? Remember, some of them expect it day of." "Yes, it's all in the wedding fund envelope in my desk," I replied. $8,000, everything left from my savings, plus what I got from selling some of Mom's jewelry. Emma's head snapped up. "You sold your mom's jewelry for the wedding?" "A few pieces. She specifically said I should use for something special someday," I explained. "The sentimental items I kept, of course." Later that night, I noticed Emma texting someone constantly, always angling her phone away from me. When I asked who she was messaging so intently, she laughed it off. "Confirming details with the florist," she said, quickly tucking her phone into her pocket. I didn't think much of it at the time. Emma had been handling so many wedding details for me, and I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? She was the person who had seen me through every up and down for over a decade. The person who knew all my secrets, fears, and dreams. The person who had promised to stand in for my mother when she could no longer be there herself. 2 days before the wedding, during our scheduled rehearsal at the church, things took a disturbing turn. I was in the church basement adjusting my simple rehearsal dress, not my actual wedding gown, but a white sundress I'd chosen to practice in. The smell of fresh lilies filled the air as the florist had begun early arrangements, and sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows. For a moment, everything felt perfect, almost too perfect. Emma rushed into the room, her face flushed and eyes wide with panic. "Sarah, honey, there's an emergency," she blurted out, fumbling with her phone. My sister called. My nephew was in an accident and they need money for the hospital immediately. I hate to ask, but could I borrow from the wedding fund? Until tomorrow when my bank opens, I'll replace it before the reception, I promise. My heart sank at the thought of her nephew Hurt, a sweet 6-year-old I'd met several times. Of course, I said without hesitation. How much do you need? Probably about $4,000, she said, her voice shaking. The deductible is ridiculous, and they won't admit him without it. I walked to my purse hanging on the coat rack and pulled out the envelope. Take whatever you need, I said, handing it over. Family comes first. Is there anything else I can do? Emma hugged me tightly. This is more than enough. You're an angel, Sarah. I'll replace it first thing tomorrow, I promise. You know I'd never let you down, especially not right before your wedding. As she hurried away, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Emma's phone screen lit up with an incoming text, and I caught a glimpse of the message. Is it done? Did you get it? M. M, the only M in Emma's life that I knew of was my ex-boyfriend Marcus. The same Marcus who had cheated on me 3 years ago with a woman he met at his gym. The same Marcus I had cried over for weeks while Emma comforted me, assuring me I deserved better. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling. Maybe M was her sister Melissa or her cousin Michael. Maybe I had misread the text entirely. Emma had been my rock for 12 years. She wouldn't betray me, especially not with Marcus. But something felt wrong, very wrong. That night, I couldn't sleep. The text message kept replaying in my mind, along with small moments from the past few months that suddenly seemed suspicious. How Emma had started canceling our coffee dates more frequently. How she sometimes seemed distracted when I talked about wedding plans. How she had occasionally asked odd questions about my relationship with David, as if probing for problems. Unable to quiet my racing thoughts, I did something I had never done before. I checked Emma's social media accounts. Her Instagram and Facebook showed nothing unusual, the normal posts about teaching and occasional nights out with friends. But then I remembered Venmo, the payment app we both used to split bills and expenses. My hands trembled as I opened the app and searched for her username. Emma's account was set to public, allowing anyone to see her transactions. What I saw made my blood run cold. 3 transactions, all from yesterday, shortly after she had taken my money. $2,800 to Chase credit card payment. $3,200 to Capital One bill. $2,000 to Marcus Williams. Thanks, babe. Marcus Williams, my ex-boyfriend. The man who had broken my heart and whom Emma had called human garbage when comforting me after our breakup. I could barely breathe as I screenshot the transactions. This couldn't be happening. Not Emma, not 3 days before my wedding. But the evidence was right there on my phone screen, undeniable and devastating. I didn't confront her that night. I needed to be sure, to understand the full extent of what was happening before I said anything. Emma had been given a key to my apartment years ago for emergencies, and I knew she was planning to come by early the next morning to pick up some wedding decorations while I was at my final dress fitting. The next morning, I pretended to leave for my appointment, but actually circled the block and returned to my apartment. I quietly let myself in and waited. Sure enough, Emma arrived 30 minutes later, using her key to enter. From my hiding spot in the bedroom closet, I watched through the cracked door as she went straight to my desk and began rifling through my papers. Come on, she muttered. Where is it? She pulled open drawer after drawer until she found what she was looking for, my wedding binder containing all the vendor contracts, confirmation numbers, and final payments. She quickly took photos of several pages with her phone, then replaced the binder exactly as she had found it. Before leaving, she did one more thing that chilled me to the bone. She took out a small bottle and sprayed something on my wedding veil that hung on the back of my bedroom door. The veil that had been my mother's. Once Emma was gone, I rushed to examine the veil. It smelled faintly of something chemical, but I couldn't identify it. Was it something that would stain, cause a reaction? I carefully placed it in a plastic bag to have it cleaned to be safe. With my heart pounding, I called my dress fitting to reschedule and spent the next hour searching my apartment. In Emma's designated bridesmaid emergency kit that she had left in my guest closet, hidden beneath makeup and hairspray, I found a folder labeled simply SW, my initials. Inside were printed email exchanges between Emma and Marcus dating back 6 months. The subject line of the first email made me physically ill: Operation Wedding Disaster Timeline. I sank to the floor, surrounded by page after page of meticulous plans to sabotage my wedding, humiliate me in front of everyone I loved, and apparently steal as much money as possible in the process. The emails revealed something even more shocking than their affair. Emma hadn't stolen my money and reconnected with my ex. She'd been systematically undermining my life for years. The Lincoln Elementary promotion was supposed to be mine, Emma had written to Marcus. I've been working there longer than Sarah, but she always gets everything handed to her because people feel sorry about her mom. After this wedding disaster, she'll be too humiliated to show her face at school again. The principal already hinted they'd consider me next if anything changed with her employment. Another email outlined how she had deliberately sabotaged 3 potential apartments I had applied for last year by calling the landlords and claiming I had a history of property damage. I had been heartbroken when those applications were rejected, and Emma had comforted me each time. But the most devastating revelation was about my mother's jewelry. She actually sold her dead mom's jewelry for this wedding, Emma had written. Perfect, that makes the cash even sweeter. Once we clean out her accounts on top of the wedding fund, she'll have nothing left. The final email detailed their plans for my wedding day. Emma would accidentally spill red wine on my dress before the ceremony. The veil had been sprayed with something that would cause an allergic reaction on my skin. And most horrifying of all, they planned to have Marcus make a dramatic entrance during the ceremony, claiming that David had been cheating with Emma's fictional cousin. Total humiliation in front of everyone she knows, Emma had written. She'll never recover from this. I sat there for what felt like hours, my entire body numb. The person I had trusted most in the world, the person who had held me while I cried over my mother's death, had been plotting my destruction all along. How could I have been so blind? My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. How's the fitting going? I can't wait to see you in your dress tomorrow. The casual cruelty of it made me physically sick. I rushed to the bathroom and threw up, then sat on the cold tile floor, trying to figure out what to do. My first instinct was to cancel everything: the wedding, our friendship, my entire life as I knew it. How could I walk down the aisle knowing what I knew? How could I trust anyone again? But then my eyes landed on the photo I kept on my bathroom shelf, me and Mom at my college graduation, her arm around me, both of us beaming with pride. She had fought stage 4 cancer to be there that day, refusing to let anything keep her from seeing my achievement. The last thing she had said to me before she died was, "Never let anyone dim your light, Sarah. When they try, shine even brighter." I picked up the photo, tears streaming down my face. "What do I do, Mom?" I whispered. In that moment, I made my decision. This wedding would happen, but on my terms. Emma thought she was directing a tragedy, but I would rewrite the ending. The wedding photographer, Jake, arrived at my apartment that afternoon for our final consultation. He took one look at my tear-stained face and asked what was wrong. When I showed him the emails and Venmo transactions, his jaw dropped. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I have an idea, but it's going to take some courage." Together, we formulated a plan. Jake would create a special presentation for the reception, not the usual romantic montage of couple photos, but something entirely different. My friend Lisa, a lawyer who was already a bridesmaid, helped me file a police report about the stolen money and advised me on how to handle things legally. And David, my wonderful fiancé who rushed over when I called him in tears, held me as I explained everything and promised we would face this together. "If you want to postpone the wedding, we can," he offered. "Your well-being comes first." I shook my head. "No, I'm not letting them take this day from us. Mom would want us to go forward." The morning of my wedding dawned with unusual clarity for Portland sunshine streaming through my windows, as if my mother had somehow arranged perfect weather for her daughter's big day. I got ready with my bridesmaids, all except Emma, whom I had told to meet us directly at the church to handle some last-minute details. My heart was pounding as I arrived at the church. Would Emma suspect that I knew? Would she go through with her plan anyway? I had arranged for my father's brother, a former police officer, to keep a subtle eye on her throughout the day, but I still felt like I was walking into a lion's den. Emma was waiting in the bride's room, a vision of false friendship in her lavender bridesmaid dress. "There's my beautiful bride," she exclaimed, rushing forward to hug me. I forced myself to hug her back, noticing how she kept glancing at my veil, which I had secretly replaced with an identical one. "Is everything okay?" she asked, noticing my reserved demeanor. "Wedding jitters." "Just thinking about Mom," I said honestly, wishing she were here. Emma's face softened with what looked like genuine sympathy, a testament to her acting skills. "She is here," she said, placing her hand over my heart, "and she would be so proud of you." The ceremony proceeded as planned. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, my heart in my throat as I passed the empty seat I'd reserved for my mother, marked with a single white rose. David waited at the altar, his eyes filled with love and now, a fierce protectiveness. We said our vows with genuine emotion, perhaps even more meaningful now that we had already faced our first major crisis together. Throughout it all, Emma played her part perfectly as the devoted maid of honor, holding my bouquet, adjusting my train, dabbing at tears that I now knew were as fake as her friendship. I kept waiting for her to execute her sabotage plan, but my uncle's presence and the fact that I hadn't left her alone with my dress or veil seemed to have thwarted that part of the scheme. When we were pronounced husband and wife, the relief and joy I felt were genuine. We had made it through the ceremony unscathed, but I knew the real confrontation was still to come. At the reception, after dinner had been served and the traditional first dances completed, it was time for speeches. Emma gave a seemingly heartfelt toast about our friendship and how happy she was for me and David. I noticed Marcus had indeed arrived as a supposed +1 of a distant cousin, exactly as their emails had outlined. Then it was my turn to speak. I stood, glass in hand, and the room quieted. "Thank you all for being here today to celebrate love, commitment, and loyalty," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Before we continue with the dancing and celebration, there's something I want to share about the true meaning of friendship and trust." I nodded to Jake, who dimmed the lights and activated the projector. On the screen appeared the first screenshot, Emma's Venmo transactions. 3 days ago, my maid of honor, Emma, told me her nephew had been in an accident and needed money for medical bills. I gave her access to my wedding fund, $8,000 I had saved for 3 years, partially by selling some of my late mother's jewelry. Gasps filled the room as people began to understand what they were seeing on the screen. Emma froze, champagne glass halfway to her lips. As you can see, the money didn't go to any hospital. Instead, Emma paid off her credit cards and sent $2,000 to Marcus Williams, my ex-boyfriend who is sitting right over there. All eyes turned to Marcus, who had half risen from his seat, clearly planning to escape. My uncle and 2 of David's brothers were already moving to block the exits. "But wait, there's more," I continued, nodding to Jake, who advanced to the next slide, the emails. "It turns out Emma and Marcus have been planning for months to sabotage my wedding, humiliate me in front of all of you, and apparently steal as much money as possible in the process." I read some of the emails aloud, including the parts about sabotaging my apartment applications, the plans to ruin my dress and cause an allergic reaction, and the scheme to create a scene during the ceremony. Emma was openly crying now, mascara streaking down her face as she tried to gather her purse. "Sarah, I can explain," she called out desperately. "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like," I replied calmly. "A calculated betrayal by someone I trusted with everything, including my mother's memory." The room had erupted into shocked whispers and outraged comments. Marcus was being physically restrained by David's brothers, while Emma stood alone, abandoned even by the other bridesmaids who had moved to stand beside me. "I could have canceled this wedding when I discovered your plan yesterday," I continued, looking directly at Emma. "I could have hidden away and licked my wounds in private. That's what you were counting on, my embarrassment and shame, but my mother taught me better than that." I gestured to the empty seat with the white rose. "She taught me that when people show you who they truly are, believe them, and when they try to dim your light, shine even brighter." I raised my glass. "So thank you, Emma, for showing me exactly who you are, and thank you to everyone else here who truly loves and supports us. The real celebration starts now, without the people who only came to see me fall. Security, arranged the previous day, escorted both Emma and Marcus out as the crowd erupted in applause and support. As they left, I had one final message for Emma. By the way, the police report has already been filed. Expect to hear from them soon about the stolen money. The rest of the reception was actually wonderful, a true celebration unmarred by their toxic presence. Friends and family surrounded us with genuine love and shock at what we'd endured. Several guests approached me privately, sharing their own stories of betrayal and expressing admiration for how I'd handled the situation. Later that night, as David and I slow danced under the twinkling lights, he whispered in my ear, "Your mother would be so proud of you today. I know I am." I rested my head on his shoulder, finally allowing myself to feel the full weight of everything that had happened. "Do you think I did the right thing, exposing them publicly like that?" "You didn't expose them," he said thoughtfully. "They exposed themselves through their actions. You made sure the right people knew about it." 6 months after our wedding, life had found a new rhythm. The police investigation into Emma's theft resulted in charges, and she was ordered to repay the full amount plus more damages. She was also fired from her teaching position when the school board learned about her actions. Turns out schools don't appreciate teachers who steal from grieving colleagues. Marcus faced his own consequences when his employer discovered his role in the scheme. His family's construction business had always emphasized integrity and community reputation, and his parents were horrified by what he'd done. Last I heard, he had moved to Seattle to start fresh. The money was eventually recovered through the court system, and David and I used it for the honeymoon we had originally postponed due to the whole ordeal. 2 weeks in my mother's homeland of Taiwan, visiting places she had told me stories about throughout my childhood. As for me, I kept my position at Lincoln Elementary and even received a district teaching award that spring. The betrayal had been painful, but it hadn't broken me. If anything, it had shown me my own strength and the true value of the authentic relationships in my life. On the anniversary of my mother's passing, I visited her grave with fresh flowers and the photo album from my wedding. I sat beside the headstone and told her everything: the betrayal, the wedding, the aftermath. "I wish you had been there, Mom," I whispered, touching the cool marble. "But in a way, you were. Your voice in my head is what gave me the courage to stand up for myself." As I placed the flowers against her headstone, I noticed a small butterfly land on them, yellow and white, my mother's favorite colors. It stayed there, wings gently opening and closing, as if listening to me. Sometimes the deepest betrayals lead us to our greatest strengths. Emma had been planning my humiliation, but instead, she gave me an unexpected gift: the knowledge that I could face deception and cruelty without becoming bitter or broken. That I could rewrite an ending that someone else had planned for me. The butterfly finally flew away, circling once around my head before disappearing into the clear blue sky. I like to think it was Mom's way of saying she had seen everything: my pain, my courage, and my triumph, and that she was proud. Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted was wearing a mask all along? How did you handle that betrayal? Share your experience in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about finding strength in life's most challenging moments. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the people who try to break you end up showing you just how unbreakable you truly are.